to go back to maybe a slightly more innocent time, at least in my past, in the early 90s in Denver, Colorado, I had a gang of friends. We were mostly teenagers, and it was our goal to get away with the most enormously stupid things that we could get away with. And most of the time that was breaking into buildings. And if those buildings had alarms, that was much better, and oftentimes if they had security, that was definitely the best. And so we spent our time doing this. We had definitely a costume that we loved to wear. We wore the high-tech sneakers that were just out, sneaker boots. We had the cargo pants that had lots of pockets. We wore blue flight jackets, and we even had these white hoods that sort of looked like the things that the SWAT team would get. And then we had lockpicks. And we were so proud of our lockpicks, because that was the thing that separated us from all the other amateurs. And then, of course, our gang, we also created a name for ourselves. This was in the innocent years before 9/11, before certain words had been co-opted, and indeed we thought they were really cool. We were the terrorists in training. And honestly, we hadn't thought too much about what that acronym spelled out. But that was okay, because we were awesome. We were really awesome, man. And amongst this gang, there was one girl, and wow, she really, I thought she took the cake. She, I'll call her Allie to protect her innocence. She was probably 17 when I was 19. And she had been a pilot before she could drive a car legally. She was a black belt in karate. And to me, she was just everything that was cool. Just like, she was the coolest girl I had ever met. And so I knew beyond anything that I had to find a way to impress this girl. And so in Denver in the 90s, there were tons of places to break into. And this was our pastime. We went into amazing places. There were mine shafts, there were missile silos, there were banks, old banks. But there was one building in particular that nobody could seem to get their hands on. It was a building called the Gates Rubber Company, a sprawling labyrinth of industrial mess that took up several city blocks. And it had crazy security. It was just like, the security was all over it. At least that's what the rumors said. And every time that we seemed to find somebody who had tried, it was true. And I thought, gee, if I could plan this caper and take Allie with me, that would be the one thing that would just, really stand out. And so I proposed it to her. I was like, this is the place that we should go. We should go to the Gates Rubber Company, the place that none of the other explorers have been to, and we should conquer it. Now, this building, it really was a science fiction of mess. It stood 4 stories tall, took up blocks, and it had pipes and tanks all over it. It had a huge water tower on the top that just shot into the sky, and it was surrounded by barbed wire. And we later learned that one of the reasons that it had so much security was because it was also extremely polluted. It was just filled with toxins. But we didn't know this at the time. We figured, this was the thing to do. And so we plunged in, and I proposed it to Allie, and she said, sure. So we got into our tit apparel with our black pants and our matching blue flight jackets and our hoods, and we went out to check out this building. There was a construction site that was adjacent to it, and there was a series of tractors just sitting dormant and trenches dug into the ground. And so we snuck toward this building from that direction. We parked several blocks away, found a dark place to hang out in, and sort of watched for a while. We realized, there was not a lot going on at this building. There was definitely a perimeter, the barbed wire, lights coming down, but nothing that was too scary. So we figured it was time to go in, and we made a beeline for the gate. We found a nice place to hop over. There was, a little gap in the barbed wire, and it was not easy to negotiate, but we made it in. And then that moment hit us. The moment that you're trespassing, we found that it's just this moment that everything turns a little animal. Your senses just kick in. You know that there's potential, great potential for getting busted. And at this moment we realized, gosh, we're just out here in the bright open. So we made a beeline for the walls. Once we got to the walls, we found a lot of shadow, and we snuck into the building. Once we were in, it was just magnificent. it was probably one of the most beautiful abandoned buildings that I've ever gotten to visit. The light was coming through huge banks of glass, and the glass it was floor to ceiling with the tiny panes, grease-stained and smoke-covered for years and years, and just the light of the security lights was trickling through, and this room was filled with machinery, just entirely filled, and you could walk down these corridors of abandoned behemoths that were frozen in time, fossilized. Some of them had rubber that had just been cranked out and left in piles on the floor, as if the workers, when they were given the, hey, this factory's no more, they just left the machines to go until the machine was dead. And I mean, we thought this was fantastic. But also came with this horrible smell, just like this tremendously toxic thing that, beyond stale, it was like, wow, these are solvents that have not been legal for years. We should probably find some fresh air. So we continued on. We made our way to a staircase and tried to find the roof. On our way up, we eventually began to hear some voices, and this gave us great pause. We stopped to listen. Up until now, we hadn't really been coming across any type of security, as the rumors had said. It was a pretty easy thing. But now we heard the voices and we stopped. The more we listened, though, the more we realized that there was something mechanical about the voices. They were human voices, but there was nothing alive. There was nothing in the now. So we continued to sneak up the stairs. And when we got up to the top, we found a room with a small light in it, and a desk, and a radio, and a notebook. And upon closer look, we realized that that notebook was the notebook of a security guard. And we basically found the room that the security inhabits. And now, at this point, we realized, gosh, the security guard coming back is imminent. Here we are in the place of the security guard. He's left his radio, and he's going to come back. But there's something about being 20 and being around a girl that you're just really excited about that causes your brain to short circuit. And my bravado completely swept over my intelligence. I decided the only thing to do at that point probably would be to take this book and write an entry into it. I grabbed this book with my gloved hands, and we have really nice gloves, and put the entry, "Poke Smot." In retrospect, I have no idea what I was thinking, but it must have been that the cryptography of this mastermind criminal was just going to blow them away. Anything that I can imagine. Now I'm like, gosh, it's really not any better than the derivative phrase, which itself isn't too fantastic, but the effect was good. Allie gave me a very nervous giggle, and that was just gold. From there, we definitely knew it was time to get to the roof. We continued on, and sooner or later, we did find the roof, where we found the water tower, the beautiful water tower, which was our prize. Knowing that if we could get to the water tower, that would be the ultimate goal. That would be conquering this building. So we came to the water tower, and it was just an enormous beast once we were up on the roof. It was a cylinder of steel that came down on girders, a ladder going up to it, and just something that shot into the sky. No electricity attached to it, something of the earlier days. We began to climb. And at some point on the climb, I think we realized that maybe this was the point which we really could not escape. Up until now, maybe if they had caught us, we could flee. We'd find another exit off of the roof and go. But at this point, we were locked in. But there was something about the sky that just drew us. It was like a freedom that logic couldn't explain, that would make things okay. When we got up to the top of the tank, we found a catwalk that went around the entire huge water tower, and so we scooched out onto it and around the edge to overlook all of the city. And the view was just phenomenal. It's imbued in my mind. It was the east plain of the Rocky Mountains and Denver jutting up out of the plains. It was spectacular, and I thought, gosh, we're so close. I may have impressed her, but there's probably just one thing left that I could do. And that's when I realized I could offer her drugs. So, I have brought just a handful of nitrous cartridges. And I can tell that probably those of you who have not tried nitrous, there's just there's a few of you here in this room. It takes you away from reality for just a few seconds. It's a few seconds of where you cannot respond. If outside stimulus, you're just there. A security guard can come and poke you with a stick, and you kind of sit and smile. It's just a few seconds, but it was a thing. But we thought that was just such a good idea. We thought this was really the ultimate way. These guards, they were just people that we like to thumb our noses at, and gosh, why don't we do this? And so we commenced upon blowing up our balloons and inhaling our nitrous, and as the world sort of drifted into a brief and ineffable bliss, I thought to myself, this is a wonderful moment. This is just a really beautiful thing that I'm watching take place, and I'm so happy that I have this dear friend sitting next to me. And then it dissipated, and we came down, and we realized it was probably time to go. So we scattered our couple of nitrous cartridges and made our way down. When we got back to the security room at the top of the stairs, there was one change that we probably should have paid better attention to, and that was that the radio and the logbook was gone. But we were really, really high on life, and maybe a couple of other things. And we decided that this was going to be okay. Where it should have been an emergency, we continued to sneak. We snuck down the stairs and across the floor of magnificent machines, and out our door, where we were instantly swarmed upon by just many trucks of security. And this is where I think, in retrospect, I knew that the rumors about them trying to keep this place secret were completely true. They had a vengeance to get us. And in the image that I had of myself as an elite tip operative was completely blown. Because I turned into a terrified teenager. And I ran as fast as I could. I ran over the gate like it was nothing, and I continued to go for a good while until I realized that, gosh, this is just not chivalrous. The alley was indeed just making it over the fence. I learned in retrospect that she had given it a good couple of tries, and then finally it just had made it across. But slowed my pace down enough for her to catch up with me, and then we continued back to the construction site. And then in one of those moments of telepathic terror where you both totally know exactly what should be done, there was a ditch ahead of us, and we leapt for that ditch. And I like to think that at that moment the guards saw us running into darkness and then suddenly just completely vanish. I don't know if they knew that there was a ditch there or not, but I do know that once we were in the ditch and we looked around, the lights kind of began to swim a little bit. And we thought, this is a good time to start crawling. So we started crawling through the ditch to get away. If we were to go away from the factory where we're going toward the street that I was parked on, things could be good. After we had gotten a ways away, I decided to venture a glance, and it looked as though the guards were still headed to that magic spot that we had vanished. They had opened the gate, they had made their way there, and they were going away from us. Things were really good until I looked ahead, and then I saw the Denver police. They were coming into the yard that we were so desperately trying to get out of. And to us as kids, the security was nothing. I mean, that was like, no problem, we toy around with you. But the police, they represented something different. They had training like we did, kind of, except and they also had guns, and they had a propensity to shoot people from time to time. And so we were a little bit spooked by this. We had a brief meeting in the trench and decided that there wasn't really anything to do. If we went back, we'd be cornered by everybody. We had to try and sneak by this car. And the car was coming directly in on a road that paralleled our trench, but it was the police. The cop was looking with his spotlight at everything, and so we thought we had a chance. Getting down as low as we could crouch, we got nearer and nearer to the police car until the point that we could see the light just cutting into the edge of our trench. We got as low as we could go. We heard the pebbles of his tires go, and I remember the feeling of a lawnmower blade just cutting in above my head as we crouched past. And then we made it. And so we continued to go out the trench towards our freedom, where the car was parked. And eventually we got to the street and thought, gosh, this is fantastic. Freedom is moments away. And at that point realized that you know, it really is 3 a.m. and we are the only people around here who are dressed like paramilitary weirdos. And the cops are probably going to find us eventually. We took a look back, and indeed the cop was about done searching the construction site and had continued to come back into the street. He thankfully turned the other direction for a brief period. And that is when Allie got her fantastic idea. It's an idea of sheer genius that just bowled me over to this day. I'm amazed. Before I tell you about it, I'd like to tell you just a teeny bit about Allie. She's gone on to become a fine, upstanding member of the community. She's actually an emergency room doctor, and you know, if you should be unfortunate enough to find yourself opening the eyes in the emergency room, it could be one of her brilliant ideas that saves you. And her brilliant idea at this moment was that the only thing we do would be to turn our flight jackets inside out, orange side out, and pretend like we were Broncos fans. And so we did this. I was like, this is it. This is our last part to play. And so we flipped our jackets inside out and started walking hand in hand as if we were coming from the Broncos party. We actually didn't know if there had been a game. Not really much about football at all, but we walked down the street kind of waiting for the police. And sooner or later, the police did come. The cop that was scouring us, trying to find us before the security passed us slowly. We held our breaths, and then we saw the brake light. And at that moment, we knew that we were in trouble. He pulled over and stopped and waited, and we realized that this is a sadistic cop. This guy isn't going to jump out and make us get on the street. This guy knows that we're the ones, but he's going to make us either turn ourselves in or run from him, which is what he wanted. And at that point, gosh, we knew that we could not run. He had bullets, he had a radio, he had seen us. We were going to have to walk past him. And so we kept our gait. We walked slowly up to the car, and as we got up, we met his eyes. He was scouring at us. He was looking quite mean and taking us all in, and we did the only thing that you can do when the law is after you and they have found you and it's 3 a.m. and you're wearing orange, is that we smiled. We smiled at him like we were just so thrilled. He looked at us like he was so upset, but he let us go by. And in that very moment, I realized that definitely from time to time it pays to be stupid.